Skinny Hardaway Southern T back with another EP. And it's fight week. And not only is it fight week, we got double undisputed in the women's boxing division this fight week. We got Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano in what I expect to be a banger.
All right, guys.
I expect this to be one of the better fights of the year. If you aren't a fans of women's boxing, if you're not too familiar with women's boxing, you know what I mean? If you're one of those guys, who's not a believer, in the women's side of the sport, this weekend, this fight is for you. We got Katie Taylor, who is currently the undisputed champion in the women's division, the women's 147-pound division, 140-pound division, Katie Taylor. And we got Amanda Serrano, who some see as, the best woman in boxing. You know what I mean? You got Amanda Serrano, you got Clarissa Shields, who's seen as, some of the best women in boxing. Amanda Serrano, has been doing it a little longer than Clarissa Shields. Therefore she has a, more extensive record. Clarissa Shields' milestones, are unmatched. You know what I mean? Amanda Serrano also fights, MMA. You know what I mean? So she has that under her belt, as well. Amanda Serrano is a highly, exciting fighter. If you watch women's boxing, then you already know this. And, if you don't, then I'm telling you now, she's highly exciting. She has 30 plus knockouts and 40 wins. I'm gonna get into exactly exactly what's going on in a second. I'm gonna bring my camera up in just a second too, so we can see it. I'm gonna give y'all the breakdown live today. But we got Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano for undisputed. This is one of the biggest fights in women's boxing. Probably the biggest fight in women's boxing. I'm not even gonna shortchange it. This is probably the biggest fight in women's boxing, and I think we all should get excited. For it this weekend, April 30th. Let me share my screen. About to share my screen, then we could get into the the breakdown. Because I'm here for a good time, not a long time this morning. Let me share my screen, then we can get into it. And sure. Boom. We're going to start with Amanda Serrano. You might not know Amanda Serrano, so I'm going to start with her first. We got Amanda Serrano, 42 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. Amanda Serrano has 30 knockouts, and she's never been knocked out, herself. She's 33 years old. She stands 5'5" with a 65-inch arm reach. You know what I mean? Amanda Serrano is a veteran, in his game. Again, she's who I consider to be, the GOAT, the little GOAT of all these women. Clarissa Shields is the big GOAT, and I call Amanda Serrano the little GOAT. She has, wins you may recognize, Heather Hartley, D. Silva, Hernandez, Reeves. A couple names that you might know or you might not know. 42-0, 1 KO, no knockouts, 30 KOs. Amanda Serrano is a pound for pound, I believe, in women's boxing. She's pound for pound, the hardest puncher in women's boxing. Her and Katie Taylor is a battle between 2 of the top women in women's boxing. You know what I mean? Katie Taylor, she's 20-0, 0 knockouts with 6 KOs. She's 35 years old. She also stands at 5'5" with a 66-inch arm reach. Katie Taylor is the biggest name. Katie Taylor is the biggest name in women's boxing in the UK. Katie Taylor is also, a highly skilled, highly talented, boxer in her own right. You know what I mean? Katie Taylor is signed with the Zone. She is probably the most recognizable. She's probably the most recognizable women's boxer that we have to get today, especially in the UK. Clarissa Shields may be the most noticeable in the USA, and Katie Taylor may be the most noticeable in the UK. Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. I'm getting into the fight breakdown. Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano is going to be a battle of like styles. You know what I mean? Their styles are similar. Both can box, but both, want to go in there and both want to, trade shots, throw blows, and get you out of there. Katie Taylor doesn't have a whole lot of knockouts, but I think there's more so because of the 2 minute rounds in boxing. I believe she's an extremely active fighter. Katie Taylor is. She's an extremely active fighter, high volume fighter, and I think when you matching her up against Amanda Serrano, who is also, Amanda Serrano doesn't throw as many punches as Katie Taylor, but Amanda Serrano is effective in her punching, when she decides to throw them. Again, just for reference, so you can see, you got Katie Taylor 20-0 with 6 knockouts, and then you got Amanda Serrano with 42 with 30 knockouts. Just for reference. Also to compare it, Amanda Serrano is fighting at a smaller division, or throughout her years has been fighting at a smaller division than Katie Taylor. You know what I mean? So a lot of her knockouts came from the smaller division. This fight against Katie Taylor will actually be Amanda Serrano biggest jump in weight. You know what I mean? Which I don't think will be a problem. Katie Taylor will be the bigger woman. Katie Taylor is an active fighter, but Amanda Serrano is also very effective when she throws her punches as well. So I expect this fight to be a banger. I don't expect either of these women, to back down. Amanda Serrano ain't the woman to back down. And again, I just told you, Katie Taylor throws, a lot of punches. She has a high, work output, does Katie Taylor. So I expect these ladies to meet in the ring, and I expect them to trade blows. I expect them to throw blows, and I expect it to be a highly interesting fight, and I expect it to be one of the better fights, of the year. If you've been paying attention to Southern T, this is one of the fights that I said must happen for women's boxing, and I'm glad that it's happening. April 30th, we got Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano who meeting up for Undisputed, and what is the biggest fight for women's boxing, to date, if we talking accomplishments and namesake and all that good stuff combined. Clarissa Shields may be the biggest women's boxer, but she doesn't have that counterpart, that would meet the standards of this fight. Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano are 2 of the 3 biggest names in boxing. You know what I mean? Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, 3 biggest names in boxing. Credit their own names too, by the way. So this fight involves 2 out of 3 of the biggest name in women's boxing. So I believe that this is by default the biggest fight in women's boxing. You know what I mean? Now, I'm getting to my prediction point. Now, I said the styles will mesh up. The styles will collide because neither of these women, like to go the other way. Both of these women can box, but neither of them, really likes to go the other way. Shout out my guy, Andre. Neither of these women really like to go the other way. So I see them meet in the middle of the ring. And also, Katie Taylor has a few fights, on her resume that some would deem questionable, whether she won or she didn't win, but she still got the nod. So if this fight goes 12, it'll be interesting to see, exactly what happens type deal. But I think Amanda Serrano is going to be just a little too much for Katie Taylor. I think this is a style matchup for Katie Taylor, a bad style matchup for Katie Taylor. The bigger puncher, you would think it would be Amanda Serrano, but, who knows? Maybe the size might even itself out. With Amanda being a smaller person, but the bigger puncher, maybe the power will even itself out, and it goes 12. But there is a chance that I believe that Amanda Serrano could stop Katie Taylor. The only way I can see Amanda Serrano not stopping Katie Taylor is if Amanda Serrano punches, are not enough to affect her in a point to the point where it'll knock her out. But I do see Amanda Serrano being able to land on Katie Taylor, when she wants to. I see Amanda Serrano being able to land effectively, on Katie Taylor, because Katie Taylor isn't one, to duck and dive. She isn't the one to, Katie Taylor walks right to you. Now, if Katie Taylor decides to box, then I think Amanda Serrano wins the boxing match. If Katie Taylor decides to fight, then I think there is a chance that Amanda Serrano could possibly stop her, because Amanda Serrano is good at that. But my prediction is I'm going to go Amanda Serrano by unanimous decision versus Katie Taylor. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I think it's going to be one of the more enjoyable fights, for the year. So I got Amanda Serrano by split decision over Katie Taylor in the biggest fight in women's boxing, so forth. So that's my prediction for that. Let me holler at the people in the building. Shout out my guy Drew Stacks. Shout out my guy Just Do Boxing. He says salute, bro. I'm about to roll up. Shout out my guy Andre. Appreciate you sliding through this, Andre. Shout out my guy That's Me. What's good? Shout out my nigga That's Me. Appreciate you sliding through this junk. But yeah, that's all I got. Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano this weekend. I got Amanda Serrano by split decision. It's going to be a nice fight. I could see a scenario where Amanda Serrano stops Katie Taylor, but I'm not predicting that. What I'm predicting is split decision, Amanda Serrano, and I'm going split decision off the fact that I think that Katie Taylor will be able to take Amanda Serrano punches, so it's going to end up going 12, and she's not going to stop, Katie Taylor. But that's all I got. I'm coming back with another fight breakdown and prediction, which I think, is interesting. I think you guys might want to, tune in for it. Not a big fight, but, interesting fight. Liam Smith versus Jesse Vargas coming up in a minute. But that's all I got. Skin the Hardaway, Sudden T. This ain't the past. This ain't the future. But this the present. That's how we rocking. And I'm out. Love.